reason is, how we're going to start our story to learn about what happened here on May 16th of 1771, is we want to put you in the shoes, in the spot where over 2,000 North Carolinians called Regulators stood up against the militia of North Carolina, led by Governor Tryon, that arrived here at about 11:15, and at 11 o'clock, which is right now, this is about the time when 2,000 people have arrived here to be able to hear their voices to be heard by the governor. But we first have to understand how we got here. This whole movement we call the Regulation started in the 1760s as thousands of people begin to move to North Carolina, particularly to the Piedmont, for cheap land, new opportunity, freedom from religious persecution, freedom for economics, all of these ideas to establish their own communities. Individuals, ordinary people, farmers can purchase 100 acres of land or 400 acres and have land for themselves and their descendants. There is a great promise in North Carolina in the 1760s. But as these individuals begin to live here, grow their families, start their churches and meetings, they begin to discover a deep-seated corruption in North Carolina. There are local officials, such as Edmund Fanning, the sheriff of the county, and Governor Tryon himself, that are looking for unique and interesting ways to exploit the local population. One such example is the use of the currency law, where they'd say, well, you don't have hard currency to pay your taxes, even though you might have hundreds of dollars in paper currency. Instead, we're going to then take your, let's say your plow, your horse, things you need for your very livelihood, and then they come back and say, well, actually, we took that money, we're going to now take your property, and then sometimes sell it back to you. And then, so what these regulators do, in methods of protest, they go through the process you are supposed to do. They organize. They create first the Santa Cruz Association, then what we know today as the Regulators. They elect representatives from their local neighborhoods. They assemble in mass meetings like we have here today at local mills, where they decide what's the problem and how we are going to solve it. First thing to do is launch lawsuits. They collect money together. They sue the offending officials. Except here's the problem. One of the most offending officials, Edmund Fanning, is a Superior Court judge, the colonel of the militia, the register of deeds, and their local representative. That didn't work out so well. And then, on top of that, the regulators move to the next thing you do, which is petition. We still do this today. Everybody gets together, you say, hey, there are problems in this place. Here's what we need to fix them. And shocker, they need to go to the assembly, represent them, and that same guy they're trying to represent, send these petitions to, is again that Edmund Fanning individual. This is frustration. Year after year after year, trying to get their voices to be heard. They even will eventually, in 1768, as Edmund Fanning is even being tried for corruption, he's fined a single pence for his crimes. Yeah, which is like basically a single dollar for stealing millions of dollars. So they eventually elect some of their leaders, people like Herman Husband and another regulator, to the assembly to be represented. But before they can really represent them, over in Hillsborough, the seat of Orange County, where we are today, they have a meeting. A court case is being held for some of the regulators, and they assemble outside of the building. They know some of these officials who have ruined their lives and their family are standing right in front of them. Maybe it's the frustration after years and years of their livelihoods being taken away from them, but they attack them with clubs and whips, beating them nearly within an inch of their lives. They then force the court to try cases. They want government to happen. They then go down to Edmund Fanning's house and disassemble his house, which is personally my favorite way to protest. They then riot throughout the streets, and it provokes the government, under Governor Tryon, a good friend of Edmund Fanning, by the way, to raise an army of men to suppress this population. Most notably, early in the year of January of 1771, they passed something called the Johnson Riot Act, which you will see full in force here in a second. This riot act effectively says if the sheriff of the county orders an unlawful assembly to disperse, they have 1 hour or else. And so, as where we are now, where this is years after, the army is over by the Alamance Creek. They are marching their way here. The regulators have sent dispatch after dispatch over towards Tryon to finally talk this out. He's ignored every single one. The regulators will note in their final petition, they say, "We are loyal subjects of His Majesty. We are fine with everything. We just want fair government." But His Majesty's subjects are not toys to be trifled with. And that brings us here on May 16th of 1771. And I think one of the best ways to understand this mentality is to hear from one of our regulators, Redknapp Powell, right there.
Good day to you. My name is Redknapp Powell. I came from the colony of New Jersey in 1750 to the backcountry of Carolina. You know me. I have been living with you for 15 years. I have taught your children. I have walked the length of this county. Many of you have allowed me to spend the night in your homes. I know what you're going through because, like you, I have been living in a county for the last 15 years where we have been suppressed by people that are in the leadership of government that wants to get wealthy off the backs of those that they are governing. Yeah. We are not here to overthrow the British government as this governor proclaims. Yeah. We are here as true, loyal British citizens wanting our rights as British citizens. Right. Now, let me give you an example of what's been going on. We'll take Hillsborough, for example. In 1750 or 1760, a man from New York City came down. His name was Edmund Fanning. He was already an absentee office holder in New York, which meant he's getting paid to do nothing. That's right. He was a merchant. He was a lawyer. And within a year, with the help of a lawyer friend in Williamsburg, Virginia, he became the town trustee. The next thing we know, he became the crown prosecutor. And then he became the register of deeds. A very lucrative position, the way he did it, because we have documented evidence that he charged up to 5 times the legal amount. Right. He sent the money to the governor and he pocketed the rest of it. Now, I'm a little bit of a songwriter myself, as well as being a teacher, so I wrote a song about dear Fanning, and we're going to do that song for you right now. And this is the way it goes. Are you ready? Okay. When Fanning first to Orange came, he looked both pale and worn, an old petticoat upon his back, an old mare he rode on. Both man and mare weren't worth 5 pounds, as I've been often told. But with his civil robberies, he's laced his coat with gold. And you know what Edmund Fanning did? He ordered a coat made with gold thread running through it and gold braid, so he could parade around in his coat of gold to show that there was nothing that we could do about him. Now, the governor for 6 years has refused to listen to us. He's listening to Edmund Fanning and his cohorts. Today, I understand he's on that hill. I want to hear him from you. Is Edmund Fanning the kind of person you want to be your governor? No. I can't hear you. No. Okay, right. And we want to let them know that right now. Now, not only that, but when Edmund Fanning decided he was going to run for the colonial assembly, he went to the sheriff and said, if you will be sure that I'm elected, I'll be sure that you're paid for it. He was elected. The first bill he introduced in the colonial assembly was that the sheriff would be reimbursed 1,000 pounds for losses. But no one ever explained what those losses are. Is that the kind of man you want over you? No! No, it is not. Now let's talk about that sheriff of Orange County. You know that the sheriff has the duty of arresting the criminals. But the sheriff in Orange County in 1770s was also in charge of all of the elections. He decided where the election would be held and when the election would be held. You had to go to the appointed place at the appointed time. You had to stand up in front of the sheriff, give him your name. He would look through his book to see if your name was in his book. If it's in his book, you can vote. If it's not, you do not have a vote. If he says you can vote, he's got all of his cronies packing the room, and you have to stand there in front of him and say aloud who you're voting for. Intimidation? I think so. Do you want more of that? No! Absolutely not. That's not fair government, and it's not our rights as British citizens. Now, not only that, but he was also in charge of collecting the taxes. Now, what he would do on that is he would come down and knock on your door, and he would tell you how much you owed in taxes. Now, the Colonial Assembly said you had to pay it in British currency, but there was a British law that said that it was called the Law of Distraint, that said if you had surplus crops or surplus goods, you could use that to help pay down your taxes. Now keep the word surplus in mind. What the governor was doing, what the sheriff was doing, you can't pay your taxes, I'll take your horse. A horse is not surplus. Without a horse, you cannot plow your crops, you cannot feed your family will starve. Robert. Is that the government you want? No. No, it is not. There is a total misuse of taxes. Even the governor in 1768 admitted that 50% of all of the tax money collected in Orange and the other counties was embezzled by the local sheriffs. That's not the government that we as British citizens expect. Now, what they would do with that horse once they took it, they would take it back to Hillsborough.